Welcome to episode 4 of season 2 of On the Grind. I'm your host, William A. Neal, Communications and Government Affairs Officer for Belize Sugar Industries Limited, BSI. As you may know, On the Grind, BSI's flagship production, is a magazine-style broadcast show designed to inform, educate, and communicate with viewers the way the northern sugar industry works. The show, produced internally by the BSI Communications Department, highlights people, projects, and programs aimed at continuing the industry's transformation and evolution on the road to sustainability. If you haven't seen any of our previous episodes, then we encourage you to catch it on Belize Sugar Industries Limited, BSI's YouTube channel, where they're posted and always available. Of course, our hope remains that we will provide insight into the northern sugar industry, demonstrate the way things work from farm to factory and everything in between as we work on transforming the industry to face with excellence the challenges, especially those born from climate change. Now, into our episode for today. The northern sugar industry is in a deep existential crisis. Among other challenges, it is in the thick of the war against Fusarium, a COVID-19-like infection for plants. Fusarium, a fungal infection found in the soil, leads to widespread wilting and yellowing of sugarcane and is the latest northern sugar industry threat because of climate change. This highlights only one from a myriad of challenges as the industry transitions to a new ministry and under a new minister, Dr. Osmond Martinez, a son of the South who grew up in an agriculture-based family.
It's hard to come from the South and have no interest in agriculture. Actually, when I was in high school, I grew up with a stepdad, because my mom and my dad, they were separated when I was about 6-7 years old. And so he practiced agriculture, planting of pineapples, planting coconuts. And when my stepdad got his first 30 acres of land in the Trio Village area, we had to clean that manually. So the trees, we had to bring them down with axes. So I was at high school and I was already using an axe, cleaning with machete. We did a lot of planting of beans and corn, but we used to do it by hand, where we just put the little milk can around it and, so you planting and use the stick, and drop the seed there. It's a technique that we develop over time. I went to Sixth Farm in Cayo, at Central Farm. At that time, it was the Belize College of Agriculture. So I have an associate in agriculture. I have a bachelor's in agriculture from Honduras. And then I did my master's in economic development and my PhD in Mexico. Okay, so if you look at economic development, one of its main focus is always in agriculture. And I have a bachelor's in agriculture as well.
Now, how do you feel in terms of how well suited you are to accept this portfolio out of the Prime Minister's office for sugar in particular, given the challenges that the industry is now facing?
I think it's a great opportunity. I believe that, and I strongly believe that with me and it's very interesting because I was a professor of economics at Galen University for almost 10 years. And then I was a CEO for almost 5 years, CEO in the Ministry of Economic Development. And know that I have become a humanitarian leader, not a politician, a humanitarian leader. I always look at the human aspect. That to me have helped me to understand and to appreciate, that the wealth of knowledge that I have, but in the academic sector, the public sector, and knowing how to integrate it into the public-private sector is critical because I have a much better understanding of it. So when it comes to how well I am suited, I think is the perfect marriage.
And while Minister Martinez is optimistic about his personal and professional suitability, the northern sugar industry is facing its biggest existential challenge ever, as I said before. Long criticized by outsiders as a multi-million-dollar sector that has operated more like a cottage industry, there is no denying that the industry needs a seismic shift to a more serious business model. According to Minister Martinez, that seismic shift starts with the way problems are viewed and addressed. Our conversation now expands the focus to explore a myriad of issues and the vision, also shaped by PM Briceño, as the strategic path forward.
In terms of looking at the industry, one of the first things that I did is very important to identify not problems, but to identify constraints. And some of the constraints that we have identified, for example, is that the farmers have limited cash flow because of the high indebtedness to the commercial banks at a very high interest rate. So that is already solved practically to a certain extent, because with DFC we have managed to secure $7 million, which will help with refinance, and at the same time it's a low interest rate around 6% up to 7 years maturity period for repayment period. Then we, with the experience as a CEO, we have and PM's leaderships, because it's important to understand that without the PM, it's very hard to get anything done. It's his leadership, his vision, and my experience in working with the multilaterals, we have managed to secure with 5Cs, for example, to open a component now is about $1.5 million for pest management that's going into the industry. There is an additional $4 million that will be coming from CRISAP, I think 2 to CIRDI, and the other 2 that will be used in terms of seeing how we can do as much as possible to control the fusarium. And there is an additional funds that came through the Ministry of Finance to the Ministry of Agriculture to assist with a $500,000 experiment, which I believe is, if it's not completed, it's almost that first pilot is completed. But the big picture here is that we do have the context with the multilaterals. So, for example, and let me go back, to the constraints. No, so we have managed to look at the high indebtedness and how we can pump funds into it. Also, we are now looking at and doing some analysis to float a bond that will not only be of assistance to the sugar industry, but to all the agro-productive industries, where they can, through DFC, we will be able to purchase their debts, and have a more reasonable time frame back the repayment period with attractive interest rates. So that's also in the pipeline. Another constraint that I found, it was that we still have a lot of the practice of farming is being done under the traditional system. No, with the high inputs, with the high cost of inputs, to be able to produce, with the challenges of climate change, with the challenges that we have with pests, it has to be mechanized. Other than that, the operational costs, or being a cane farmer, would only be a status and not a money-making industry that will benefit the people. And so these are the things that we're trying to change as well. We're working very closely with BSI, the ASR. We have worked and have significant amount of meetings with all the associations, CIRDI, the government of Belize, Dr. Avilas have been assisting, and everyone agrees now that it's important that we move into a mechanized system. Now, we have additional funds from CRISAP and also funds that can come from the from IDA, which is one of the departments or branch from the World Bank, which Belize became eligible last year, and which have highly concessional finance, of like 0.75% and up to 40 years repayment a period of time, a 10 years grace period. And so these are the type of funds that we will need to assist the farmers to move on into a mechanized system. Because once they can do that, then the return on investment will be equal or greater than the investment, which is what we are looking for. Because remember, we have to look at sustainability at two branches. One is the cane farmers, and two, the government, because our macroeconomic indicators have to be responsible, managed. We have to be fiscal responsible, but also the investments, that at least it has an equal return to the government, or equally or greater returns for it to have that sustainability component. Other areas that we have seen constraints is, and I must congratulate BSI, the ASR, also the area representative from the north, that there are issues with land documents. So if the farmers don't have a land document or a title for the land that they are using, it becomes an additional constraint, because that limited resources, which is land and has such a high value and is precious in the banking market and the fintech, the financial technology models, we won't be able to put them into turning all of that into money, because there is not a land title or a lease. And I have also had some meetings with the minister and CEO of Lands Department, and they are doing their best to help. I know you all have been collecting some names and the data, which is critical. But that's another constraint that it has. And then the other constraint that was identified, especially for the last harvest, which is an estimated about 70,000 tons of cane that left in the field. It was simply because we didn't have the manpower, the shortage of labor. And so we have to close those gaps. Okay. And last but not least, and this is one of the recommendations from the Commission of Inquiry, that is to have the harvest groups. Harvest group, I think it was from the analysis, scientifically analysis that was done by Dr. Avila. It shows that it needs to be reduced. I think there was about 300 of them, to be reduced to 100, so that the harvest group can increase, right? And then we can have more efficient harvest time. No, that is one section, one pillar of the industry. The second pillar now is the mill. And the mill it won't be economically viable or cost efficient if it has too many hours of downtime. A factory of this magnitude needs to be supplied constantly, so that it can stay on and to be operating at maximum capacity, simply because your operational costs, whether the factory, the mill process 1 ton or 7,000 tons per day, the operational cost is the same. So to make it more efficient, it's important that it maximize in its productivity. And one of the maximizations of productivity is simply to understand its capacity. And this capacity is 7,000 tons. And so we are working now with all the logistics and everything to get it done. And last but not least, one of the constraints that we identify as well was simply the road infrastructure, right? And then when you look at that issue, we have the government has approved for the 2025-2026 fiscal budget $1.2 million through the Ministry of Infrastructure Development, which should be able to do rehabilitation of about 75 miles. That is an average of about $16,000 that will be invested per mile. With that said, it won't take it to a high standard and to say, this is where it should be. I mean, a nice road, but at least that it will be in much better conditions than where it was, where it is now, and where it is and where it was during the harvest time. And in that same line with the roads, the Prime Minister is looking at how we can pave, and he called it, and I quote, the main arteries, those arteries that will facilitate the industry in terms of making things much easier, much efficient. Because with the issues of climate change and the high cost of operations, which inflation is everywhere. Inflation is not only affecting the private sector, it also affects government. So we will, as a government body, will do less with the same amount of money. So just a simple example. In 2010, $1.2 million could have done more miles than now. But inflation is also affecting it. Okay. So and so that's the part, and we have to think about the next 10, 20 years, which means what the $1.2 million can do now, they might be able to do half by 2030, 2040. Right? So money is also an issue, and hence the PMs wants to look at how we can do things that are more of long-term and more sustainability. So that's more or less on a nutshell, Williams.
Now, that's a big nut, right? Because you have so many moving parts in there. How do you actually lead the transformation that is necessary? And how do you decide what the priority areas are? And do we have to, I know sometimes you have to fly the plane while you're repairing the plane.
Right.
So how do we do all of that and not be overwhelmed, but still maximize the impact of what the investments are?
Well, first we must develop leaders, right? And we must understand that we need to delegate responsibilities. The key component on that equation, is to be able to find the finance, because without money we won't be able to do anything. But when it comes to priority, I believe that our main priority right now is to arrest the Fusarium fungus, right? Because without arresting Fusarium, then we will not have an industry, and what the prime ministers have echoed, and he is passionate about it, is what happened to the citrus industry with the greening disease. He won't want it. He won't want to see it repeats in the sugar industry. So we are doing our best to find all the financial needs to satisfy the problems, and more important, to rescue the industry from the crisis that it is.
How significant would you say the Fusarium issue is? Because I think people have heard it in the public domain, but they don't quite understand the severity of it. That, along with, I want to tack on just a little piece that you're working with a crop, which means it has windows of opportunity for everything. So how do you navigate that particular issue of Fusarium and the windows that are available?
I will summarize it, and you let me know if it's clear enough. But the Fusarium is now the COVID in the sugar industry. So everyone experienced COVID. Everyone knows what COVID was. Imagine now it's the sugar industry that has COVID, right? And so we need to give a lot of attention. I won't call it Fusarium for now. I will say COVID-25 in the sugar industry. And that way, the general public will be able to understand it a little bit more. That is a serious threat to the industry. But also Belize has the experience with the greening disease in the citrus, right? So it's very serious. I don't know if that explains it.
Yeah, it does. Now, we're talking about, Fusarium and climate change.
Right.
You also have a population of farmers who are, in general, a little bit more than 50.
Right.
So you spoke about technology, mechanization, and so many other things. How do you, and I like the fact that you're talking about the humanitarian approach to whatever portfolio you have.
Right.
How do you take that approach and still, given the urgency of the situation, get people on board? How do you create a big tent for all stakeholders?
I think I have had the privilege to visit every association. I have been talking with so many farmers, and everyone wants to move on into to move into a technified farming, mechanized farming. The problem is funds. How do you access the monies, right? And then on the other hand, some of the farms are very small, so not every farm should be able to own their own equipment to be able to move on to a mechanized system. Hence, we are doing our best right now to see how we can do that proper coordination, but also to synchronize it, right across the industry, that it can be done, with maybe not only, I won't even say that there is a little cost to it, but I would say that it will even put more money in the pockets of the farmers. And I will give you a simple example. I like numbers. So one of the first thing I did was, okay, what's the cost to deliver the cane? When we look at the logistics, I got about two figures, $33 and $36. I check with, if we were to move on into a mechanized system, it will be somewhere between 18 and 23 Belize dollars. So who will be making more money? The farmers, right? But we need to synchronize it. Also, here at ASR, BSI, I got a presentation. I received a presentation, and within the presentation, we look at the capital investments in terms of equipment within the industry. And I can tell you it's overcapitalized, right? So we have a huge amount of equipment, but none of those equipment are being used efficiently. So and just to give you an example, if you have a capacity if one of your equipment have the capacity to process, say for example, 2,000 tons of cane per day, but you are only doing 800, then you are not maximizing, on the productivity of which that equipment was designed. In addition, it's important to note that whoever made that investment had to pay it for that capacity. So they're losing, right? But if it can be more synchronized and get everyone, and it will take time, but I see positive feedback from all the associations.
Now, when you look at the fragility of the industry, we were trumpeting that it was the highest cane payment. And suddenly we're at one of the, not the lowest, but at one of the lower cane payments,
Right.
but definitely at one of the lowest cane production figures ever. So you're looking at all of this and how quickly there's a shift. Can we see an upward shift as quickly with the right interventions?
I believe we can. The agro-productive sector, as any other sector, is volatile, to the international market and how it works. But for us to achieve it, and quickly, everyone have to be synchronized in understanding that we have a clear vision and a clear mission. And I won't say I was surprised or appalled. I was just a little taken aback when I learned that there is not a strategic development for the industry, whether in the medium term or the long term. And that is something else that we need to work, because we all need to have a clear vision of where we are going. Everyone knows where they want to be in 5 years, but it's not a collaborative effort, because nothing is in a book, nothing is written. I can walk any um, of the organs that forms the industry, the sugar industry, and you won't see anything that says the vision and mission. As is, I saw some division, right? In terms of every association have their vision and mission, right? And which is good for their association. But for the industry, you cannot have that same vision and mission. You have to have one. And that's very important. So that's some topics that we have been discussing with the associations to see how we can synchronize, understand, that the only way forward is having one mission, one vision, working together, produce together. Other than that, it will not be the best case scenario from year to year, and every year will be like a roller coasters. It will bring surprises, whether it's a good one or a bad one. But once you have a clear vision and mission, it will help to understand that when you have, you can look at historical data, and every year you should be prepared for the worst, but still make money, right? In this case, everyone is preparing for the best. And so when the worst comes, it's a big problem, simply because we don't have that approach as one industry. It's 4 different associations, 4 different visions, 4 different missions. But I want to leave this clear now. In conversations with the 4 associations, they're ready. They are ready to see how we can put this strategy in place. And even CIRDI, who is a main player of the industry, everything needs to be aligned. So when development partners come, you should be able to, first of all, you should know where you want to go. And secondly, how will you get there? And thirdly, who will help you to get there? And thirdly, how will you get the money? So it's not get the money first. It's actually you need to know where you want to go, how you will get there, who will help you, and where the money will come from.
One of the final questions I have for you is, at a time when everything seems so challenging and up in the air, and the sense of uncertainty can be overwhelming, how do you, as the Minister of Sugar, actually offer a lifeline of hope and say, to demonstrate that there is a way forward and it can be done and will be done?
Well, there are two ways to do it. One is that we cannot just talk and give comfort. We must give comfort by actions. And for example, if you see, I am here every Thursday. And with that said, we're meeting with the associations. We are telling them what we're doing. We're picking up information from them. We take it back, sometimes to cabinet, sometimes to the prime minister, or we lobby through the banks or the multilaterals, so that we can get the necessary funds. So it's actions, right? The second part is constant communication. So we're communicating and saying, listen, you asked for this has been done. We asked for this has been done. So we have constant communication. I have constant communication with the 4 associations. They all can reach me to my cell phone, and we try to be as responsive. And to everyone, to the associations, to CIRDI, to BSI, the ASR. So the main thing to remove uncertainty is quick actions and communication.
What would you say is the vision that you have past this immediate threat to sustainability and actual survival of the industry?
And I think I'll be arrogant just to look at my vision, but the wider vision, the Prime Minister's and Cabinet vision, the vision of Plan Belize 2.0, which is 1, to move the industry into a mechanized system. 2, to move the industry into financial sustainability. 3, to free the industry's cash flow for to be able to understand what are their needs are on an immediate situation, whatever actions we need to take when there are challenges. And that can only be done by having one mission, one vision for the industry. And I can be part of the mission, but the vision has to come from the farmers. Where do they want us to take them? All right. And then we also have the component with BSI ASR, where again, how can the industry, how can the middle, move into financial sustainability, and what we should be able to do in order to achieve that and to help. Because what I am seeing and how the industry looks like is like, just look at the cameras they have. It's a tripod. No? So in one side you have the cane producers, on the other side you have the middle, and the other side the government. So if any one of the three components that I have mentioned would fail or not pull its weight, then the tripod will fall. Right? So the industry is practically on a tripod that we need to do. But the vision, and one important point that I forgot to mention, is in addition to make it financial, sustainable, and everything, is to be able to increase the yield per acre. That will help the farmers in terms of their operational costs, their overheads, and at the same time that we should be able, and I have done some analysis and along with other economists and statisticians, whereby we will be able to increase production at least by 3 to 5% on an annual basis, right? And that is possible, but we need all the players to be able to play the game the right way.
The final question, as you talk about playing the game together, we know that the industry has not always sung kumbaya,
Right.
right? So how do you see yourself playing a role in bringing that synergy that is necessary for sustainability to the industry when it's at an existential crisis?
I think the Prime Minister and myself, we have done a good job so far. Because if you see, for the first time, everyone is coming together. We're having the meetings with the associations. And the most important part is that communication, respect, trust. So, for example, I visited some of the associations, the two from Coruscant, and they were upfront by saying that no one have ever visited their office, no minister, right? And that by itself, put them in a place that, okay, you care for us, we care for the farmers, because the sugar industry is not just a macroeconomic number that will contribute to foreign exchange or the exports status, but it will contribute to the daily livelihoods of thousands and thousands of families in the North. They are dependent that the industry will be in a good path so that they can educate their child, build a new house, buy a new car, be able to put food in the table. So for us, as a government, we are not looking at the industry just from the macroeconomic indicators, but also the micro, and the most important part, the human aspect, right? How important it is. So with all of that, and that's what we have said to the associations, listen, when we sit around here, it's not for associations and me sitting here, and BSI and CIRDI. We are responsible for thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are depending on us, that we will take the right decision. So we cannot be selfish on those decisions, and all decisions are in the best interest of the of the producers, the cane farmers. It's in the best interest of BSI, the ASR. It's in the best interest of the government, but more important, in the best interest of the people who are the hardworking people and families who are being traditionally producers for generations after generation.
My final question has to do
That's
with.
the third time you said
I know, but that tells you how important the conversation is. Um, People who are south of Orange Walk are not directly involved in the industry, but for them, most of the time, they're not. Distance sometimes gives you a space where you're not even empathetic to the situation. Why should someone who lives south of Orange Walk care about what is happening in the north with the sugarcane industry, besides their sugar on their tables?
Right. So in my case, for example, I look at humans, right? And one day I will die. One day I will go before God, and one day God will ask me, what did you do for them people when you had an opportunity to do something for them? Because it's a privilege that God has given to me. And that's my philosophy. I take it not only in the sugar industry, but also across the country, that, I don't look at political colors. I look at a human. I don't look at whether I'm from the south, coming here. And that's the spiritual part. No, the academic exercise, I am part of a responsible government, a government that wants to see its economic grow, a government that wants to see betterment for the people. I was part, and I led, along with Dr. Avila, the development of the Plan Belize medium-term development strategy, which was coordinated under the Ministry of Economic Development. And our main objective, is we have 6 strategic points within the medium-term development strategy. Reduction of poverty. It's number 1, which means that if the sugar industry would collapse, then poverty will increase. Economic activity is number 2, which means if the industry collapses, there will be less economic activity. Reducing the trade deficit is number 3, which again affects the sugar industry. And then the remaining 3 points may not have an impact on the sugar industry, which are the protection of the environment, citizen security, but even citizen security, because there is a strong correlation between high unemployment and crime. So if there would be unemployment, then there will be more crimes committed, because people will go out and steal, et cetera, et cetera. And then the last one, number 6, is good governance. But if you look at it, practically the 6 strategic points have an impact on the industry. And from economic standpoint of view, as an economist that I am, unfortunately, I don't see north, south, west is in Belize. I see one Belize. I see one people. And I see that the people that are here, they are my brothers and sisters.
BSI is the largest employer in the north, with more than 500 people powering our operations. And if you add in all the temps and casuals, that number moves closer to 700. In our ongoing segment entitled People, Power, and Empowered, we continue to highlight the diversity, job, gender, age, among other things, of our workforce. See if you spot any familiar faces, from friends to family. You never know. With that, we've come to the end of another episode of On the Grind. Once again, we hope that it has been the right amount of edutainment, education, and entertainment on the northern sugar industry and the necessary path forward to address the ravages of climate change. Please continue to like, share, and comment as we shine a light on our northern sugar industry. We leave you once again with our theme song consisting of factory sounds harvested and arranged by Elric Tillett and Chandler White to capture the industrial symphony that is Tower Hill. Listen carefully, and when the siren sounds, know that we're only changing shifts because we stay on the grind 24/7 on the clock. Until next time, I'm your host, William A. Neal. Thank you for tuning in.